بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا Muhammad وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Inshallah, tonight we'll be finishing Surah Al-Ma'idah as well as finishing about 110 ayahs of Surah Al-An'am. Surah Al-An'am is very different from the surahs that preceded it in the fact that it's actually a Meccan or Makki surah, meaning that the Muslims during this phase of the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ were going through struggle, they were going through persecution, and there were a lot of objections, a lot of accusations from the mushrikun. And the mushrikun and the kuffar, the Quraysh, they asked a lot of tough questions. And so Surah Al-An'am is actually that surah that responds to those questions. It responds to questions about prophethood, why the Prophet is a human being. It responds to question about who is Allah and why should we worship Him and why should we worship Him alone. And so Surah Al-An'am is essentially an introduction to who is Allah and what you believe about Allah. And there's some discussion here and there about the Day of Judgment, as well as some discussion about past nations. The scholars of tafsir, they say about Surah Al-An'am that anyone who is deficient in their understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or deficient in their belief, they don't feel like they have a high level of iman or a high level understanding of Allah, they should read this surah in particular, because this is the surah that introduces Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to humanity. And if you're somebody that says, well, I know who Allah is and I have belief in Allah, but sometimes I don't feel that awe or reverence when I'm in salah, or I don't feel connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is the surah that you should read. If you read this surah, it will soften your heart and it will help you grow in your love and connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I want to focus on ayahs 43 and onwards. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in ayahs 43 and onwards, He speaks about a group of people before us. What is the name of this group of people? We don't know. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions these people nonetheless based off of a habit of theirs, something that they used to do. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَلَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا إِلَىٰ أُمَمٍ مِّن قَبْلِكَ, that indeed we sent prophets to the nations that came before you. فَأَخَذْنَاهُمْ بِالْبَأْسَاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَضَرَّعُونَ, that we took them with trials, with tribulations, with tests. We put all of the challenges of life in front of them. لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَضَرَّعُونَ, so that perhaps they would turn back to Allah, so that perhaps they would reorient themselves to Allah's direction, they would humble themselves before their Creator. Here there's an important lesson for us. A lot of times when Muslims see somebody else going through a hard time, they think that, oh, Allah is punishing that person. When in reality, not every difficult time, not every challenge in life, not every struggle means Allah is punishing you. In fact, it actually means Allah is testing you to see whether you will come back to Him or not. It's a test. Nothing more, nothing less than that. لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَضَرَّعُونَ. And so it was never a punishment in the first place, but a way to draw back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَلَوْلَا إِذْ جَاءَهُمْ بَأْسُنَا تَضَرَّعُوا وَلَكِنْ قَسَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ. That if they had truly understood this fact, if they had understood that all the difficulties in their life, the challenges, the tribulations were just a test, and the test was so that they would turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this would have caused them to be successful. But what happens? قَسَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ. Their hearts get hard. وَزَيَّنَ لَهُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ مَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. The shaitan, he comes to them and says, well, your life is already too hard and too difficult. Why do you have to follow all of these rules? And he makes their sins and the haram things that they do beautiful to them. Right? وَلَكِنْ قَسَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ. Their hearts, they become hard. The devil makes their bad deeds good in their eyes. فَلَمَّا نَسُوا مَا ذُكِّرُوا بِهِ فَتَحْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ أَبْوَابَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. The most scary ayah. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, when they forget that which we have reminded them of, when they forget the fact that we're testing them in the first place, What do we do to them? We don't punish them. فَتَحْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ أَبْوَابَ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. We open the whole world to them. We give them all of the blessings. They want money, rizq, we give it to them. They want wealth, they want fame, we give them every single thing. فَتَحْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ أَبْوَابَ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ حَتَّى إِذَا فَرِحُوا. Until they get so happy and ecstatic, أَخَذْنَاهُمْ. That we grab them right at that moment. بَغْتَةً. All of a sudden. فَإِذَا هُمْ مُبْلِسُونَ. They're in a state of confusion at that moment. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you these blessings only to punish you through them. And so this is something that's very, very scary. A person might think, oh, I'm chosen. Allah has given me all of this. Allah has made me this. Allah has made me that. That they're thinking that Allah is happy with them. But the reality is that Allah is not happy with them. Allah is just, punishing them through luxury, through blessing. Right? And so one thing that we have to understand, the lesson for us in these ayahs, is that a punishment or a trial or tribulation does not mean Allah is angry with you. And a blessing does not mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is happy with you. What makes Allah happy is that when you are in their trial and the tribulation, you do the right thing and you turn back to Allah. And when you're given a blessing, you also do the right thing and you use it and utilize it for the right reasons. You use it to take care of your families, you use it to take care of your communities, you use it to give back. This is the challenge for the believers. Because no blessing nor no trial means or equals the punishment or the happiness of Allah. It's what you do that equals the punishment or the happiness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq and understanding to use every single blessing that we're given as a way to make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala happy, and use every single trial or tribulation as a way to connect back to Allah and to be patient so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also becomes happy with us. Subhanakallah wa bihamdika.